Hello and welcome to the next edition of Blades of Thunder. Hello there. Right, as you see, we're back in the workshop after the weekend's test flight. We noticed after a few minutes good flight that we did lose drive. Nothing major, but it had a little bit of a heavy landing and we lost drive, which we found that the pinion had come loose, so the gear had lost its drive. Not major problem, but time to check it over and make sure everything's okay and rectify the fault that we know is there. So we get these out of the way. Let surgery begin. Okay, so now we're going to sort of start going through this helicopter, making sure everything's as it should be, investigating what went wrong with it, and then rectifying it and making it all nice, ready, flyable for the weekend again. So, take the front off, get that out of the way. Now, best thing to do, a little bit difficult to see with the old battery tray in the way, so let's quickly take the screws out. As always, little pot, keep your screws and things handy, don't let them drop on the floor. I know we're using the working area cloth, but always best to try and get into good habits. Okay, switch that round. As these screws are going into plastic, because they're mounted, they're not that tight, so we haven't got to worry too much about trying to crack off any Loctite. Right, here we go. Pull that out of the way, put that to one side as well. Little tip, again, when you're taking things apart, if you don't have to work on the helicopter actually taking the airframe out of the fuselage, try and work on it in there. Only take it out if you've really got to, because there's a big problem. Luckily for us, this one is reasonably straightforward and rectifiable without having to take the mechanics out of the airframe. We can fix it, keep it in there, less disturbance, don't damage the screws or the screw holes holding the airframe actually into the fuselage. So right, as we can see, check things over. Unfortunately, the main pinion drive gear has come loose. Not the end of the world. All we've got to do is a little bit of investigation. Sherlock Holmes time. Let's find the missing grub screw. Now, with a little bit of carefully, we can hear a rattle, so it's in there somewhere. Now, that sounded to me like it was coming from the front, so let's have a look and see if we can fish it out. Now, I think I can. Where is she? There it is. Down in the front. It's always best, really handy tool to have for this sort of job is a magnet on a stick. The amount of times you have to use this, very few and far between, but it's a godsend when you actually do need it. Again, weight on the front of the helicopter so we can then sort it out. Now the little trick is what we have to now do is get this little grub screw back into the little hole in the pinion. As you see, we've just got to get it in the right place. Then more importantly, we have to make sure that the pinion is in the right place and the right height to get full mesh on the drive gear. I know it's very difficult to see using the camera, but there is actually a flat on the shaft coming out of the motor, and that's where that pinion's got to go in and locate. So with a little bit of movement, a little bit of turning, so that's the position that we want to end up in. So what we'll do, all we've got to do is just, now unfortunately we're going to have to take that out of there. We need some Loctite. Now I'm doing it the sort of quick and easy way, little squirt on a piece of plastic or an old bag. It's not going to cause any problems. If I can get some out of the bottle. Ooh. There we go. You don't need a lot, just need a very small amount. If you're going to be doing a build when you're putting something together, a little tip is an old tablet tray, like the old paracetamol, that sort of thing. Cut a strip of those off, and then you've got a handy little container you can squirt your Loctite into, so you can just keep on dipping into it and you don't end up having a plastic bag that's likely to get moved, blown away, or more importantly, you're not going to put your hand or your tools in it. Now then, we just need a very small amount. You don't have to put all of it in there, just enough. Cover a couple of threads and that will do its job. Now, what we have to do now is a little bit of a balancing act. Get the pinion in the right place and try and sight it up. Is there. Make sure that the pinion's got full mesh onto the drive gear, and that's where you go. It moved, and we go. Okay, reset. Don't just wind it in there and go, oh, that'll be fine. Make sure that has started properly, or you could end up damaging thread on the grub screw or the thread in the pinion, neither of which would be a good start. So just wriggle it down. You can normally tell when it's going onto the gear and it's all good. Okay, right. That feels good to me. Now, you don't wang on it really hard because you'll end up damaging the thread, damaging the pinion, or breaking the tool and rounding off the Allen key. You just put it in there so it touches, and then a little finger nip, and that's it. You don't have to wang it up super tight, because when you have to take it apart, the last thing you want to do is round out the grub screw. Okay, so we've tightened up the pinion, made sure that's all nice and secure. Time to put the battery tray back on. It's not going to go anywhere without a battery. Make sure that goes in, locates nice and tightly. Back to our trusty pot for all our screws. As with all of these, don't tighten them all up until all of them are started. Otherwise you could end up with bolt holes that are not in line where they should be, because you've just basically pulled it out of alignment. Not the end of the world, but this particular battery tray, it's a plastic one, so you don't go hanging on it. Again, wait until it touches, and then a small finger nip. That's all you need. Otherwise, again, you could end up stripping the threads in the plastic, and that's not always a good thing. Now that is all nice and tight, and we've finished with our little pot. Let's get the tools out of the way. Now let's That's all back together. Straighten the blades out. And we'll just rotate things, make sure that everything is doing what it should do. There's no damaged teeth anywhere. Would have thought there would be on the type of landing that we had, but it's always a good idea just to have a quick look, just to make sure everything's all good. And because we had a slightly heavy landing, nothing too major, always check that the skids are nice and tight. There's no cracking in any of the glues or epoxies that actually hold the legs in. If there is, mix up some epoxy, put it on there, let it stand, leave it for the 24-48 hours to cure, then take off. Everything all looks good. I'm quite happy to say that's ready for another test flight, which we'll be handing over to Paul to do his skills and show us how it's done.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.